Teddy, and let him tell you about himself and those things that I mentioned. And if you got something else you want to add, please do. So please welcome Teddy Wynn, everybody.
All right, so I was hoping that Cassandra would break the ice, but it looks like I get to do that first. My name's Teddy. I teach at Lakeside High School and Junior High in Hot Springs. And this is my 4th year teaching, probably the hardest one yet. I'm sure it's hard for a lot of y'all as well with changing and like doing, well, there's the bell. Give that a second. With dealing with all like the virtual and like hybrid teaching and teaching kids that are at home and teaching kids that are at school. I think this seems to be a hard year for all of us. But as far as my first year, I think the biggest thing that I would have done differently is definitely plan and plan some more, like all the time. Constantly planning, constantly thinking about the next thing, because you can never plan enough. And in college, I had a really horrible habit of winging it. And my music ed teacher in college told me to take that out of my vocabulary. And I didn't do that my first year. So there were a lot of times where I'd be teaching and then I'd have like a kind of a decent idea of what I was going to do that day. And then I would totally blank out because I'd already finished everything I was going to do. So always plan more than you think you need, especially that first year. That's my biggest advice and something I wish that I had done. As far as like a time where I felt like I wanted to quit is probably when my 2nd year, they gave me 6th grade choir, and I didn't know I was going to teach that. That year, I found out the week before. So sometimes you get thrown into situations that you don't expect. So I ended up having about 76 graders that year. The other teacher had about 100 of them. And we didn't have 2 choir rooms down at the middle school. And so they put us in like the old orchestra room, which was only like, you could only fit like fire code wise, like 50 kids in there. So I had 75 or 80 almost. So we were tightly packed. It was like a storage room for instruments. I had a lot of anxiety before that class every single day. And then I'd walk in there. I think a kid got a concussion that year in that class. We were playing, Poison Rhythm. And then I turned around for a second, and next thing you know, he's laying on the ground, and like I have to call the nurse in and stuff. But that made me want to quit. But then I realized it's like, you need to just like learn from that experience. At least for myself, I always kind of see it as like a challenge, and that I'm trying to get better all the time. Even if it is with an age group that I'm not super comfortable with. But I learned so much from teaching 6th grade that now I feel better about teaching my junior high kids. So that's kind of what I have. I feel like if you change you reframe your mindset about things that happen negatively, then you can get over the burnout feeling, go home and sleep, and make sure you have time for yourself. I don't know. What do you guys think, Tanner and the rest?
Yeah. Anything else you want to add? I mean, this is just the introduction and kind of telling us about yourself. Anything else you want to add before I go on to Tanner?
Discipline is really important, especially if you're a young teacher. Get that strictness in early because it's harder to come back from being really nice and the cool teacher, the fun teacher, than it is to really have that structure set at the beginning and then relaxing afterwards. I learned that the hard way. Some of the kids thought I was a high school student, so my first year. But that's about it.
You probably still get that, don't you?
Well, I'm trying to grow a mustache right now. Just really weird for me. I'm going to shave it because it's gross, but you know.
All right, ladies, be sure and grow a mustache. That'll fix it. There we go.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, Tanner Oglesby, would you do the same thing? Tell us the good, the bad, the ugly of your first few years of teaching and what you're doing now and how many years experience, please.
Yeah, so my name is Tanner Oglesby, and I'm the choral director at Bryant High School, and this is my 4th year teaching. So I kind of jotted down some notes of some things. I wanted to start with one of the main things that I want you to remember, and Teddy kind of touched on it, was the making sure you're being really attentive to classroom management. That cannot be stressed enough, especially when you're starting, because the thing is, what we're for me, and the way that my degree worked, was that we had like music classes and then we had education classes, and there wasn't a lot of overlap. So understanding what classroom management looked like in a choral setting was very it was abrupt that first year of teaching, because it's not the same as you would handle classroom management in an elementary classroom or just a general ed classroom. And so that's the biggest thing. And I actually was originally going to go into the medical field, and all through college I worked in mental health facilities. And so I felt like I had a pretty good rein on how to manage groups of people. And teenagers are crazy. They might be crazier than any person that I've ever worked with in a mental health facility. And so just navigating that was interesting. But I will say that that part of teaching, figuring that out, was the key to everything. If I figuring out how to get my boys choir to buy into me was solely due to the fact of classroom management. You know, coming in strong, understanding like we have hardcore boundaries, so we have this, we have this, we have lines we don't cross, and just kind of figuring that out with them in a way that doesn't feel too much like you're a dictator, but also that, you know, you're setting some real, it's just a fine line. You're setting some boundaries, but you don't want to seem not human. And so the other side of that coin is you've got to show your kids that you're human. And kind of develop your teacher aesthetic. So like my teacher aesthetic is sassy Southern gay man who is not scared to call you out on your stuff in the middle of class. And they know that. And they know that I'm a little bit crazy in that way. But in the same time, they know that like we can just, at a turn of a coin, we can be jumping into some music, you know, just always keeping them on their toes. That's kind of my thing. And so you've got to figure out what works for you and your kids. And the fact of the matter is there's no one personality that works. It's just like, are you showing your kids that you're human and that you have a personality? And that's really what, then the music and all of that, it'll come. Building your program, all of that, it'll come. A couple of things that I jotted down was make sure that you befriend everyone: administrators, bus drivers, custodians, lunch staff, fellow teachers. You never know when they will back you up, when they will support you, when your kids have to miss school and they won't freak out about it, you know. And making sure they understand you and what you do, and then they'll respect your kids too and your program. I touched on classroom management, giving the kids just a tinge of sovereignty to make them have that buy-in and really, really feel like they're owning the classroom. And then I put a couple of random things in there. One, don't read into kids' IEPs and 504 plans. Don't read into that too much. And the reason I say that is they're great documents, but they're also living documents. Don't let what you read in those scare you from what a kid's able to do. The same goes for ESL documentation. I was terrified my first year seeing in my treble chorus, I had at least half of them had IEPs. And to me, with my lack of knowledge of a lot of things, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so many kids in SPED in this class. Like, what are they going to be able to do? What are they not going to be able to do? And they just sang. It was fine. You know, it just, I think I freaked myself out too much about stuff like that. And in reality, it's a little bit more simple than you think. And touched on that. And then I just had a couple of just quick little things that help me and save my life every day. And that's Google Chrome bookmarks tab, the bookmarks bar. It's everything. Use it. Find something that's secure to save all your passwords, because we've got at least like 10 of them just for ArkCDA. So find something to save those passwords. Trying to look through there. Yeah, just find a way to make your program an integral part of your school culture, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Those are just, I know that's a ton of things, and it seems like a lot, but just take every hit in stride and just keep moving forward. Like Teddy said, plan, and then plan some more. I'm in year 4 and I still feel like I'm not planning enough. You know, there's just always something that can be done better with planning. And that's what gives me the security as a teacher, knowing that I'm walking in the classroom prepared and ready.
Did you ever have I don't want to do this anymore moment your first few years?
Oh, yeah, I have one. It seems kind of funny, but it's not funny. I had a student my very first year, and the choir kids, you know, you build a relationship with them really quickly, but many of us teach other subjects. And so I was teaching a general music class my first year, and I had a student who I had been told by other teachers, be careful, he'll have a meltdown and it's really hard to contain it or whatever. And we were fine. I mean, everything was fine. And I was trying not to, read too much into it and just kind of let him, be a student in my class and not freak out about it too much. And one day, I can't remember exactly what happened, but he had a meltdown that I had heard about, one of the famous ones, so much. And I had done all sorts of intervention stuff, especially working in the mental health field. Like, I knew what I was doing. And not with this kid. I mean, he was going crazy and threw a chair and went outside and was trying to bang his head on a brick wall. And I was like, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow. I was like, I don't know if I could do this. This is crazy. Like, I think in that moment, I realized I'm in charge of human lives. And if something goes wrong, I could be at fault, and that was just that was a big moment for me to be like, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle this in the future? That was a big, crazy moment for me that I thought I might not make it through it. But Monday came along and we were fine. So.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, Ethan Wells, same thing, the good, the bad, the ugly, how long you been teaching, so on and so forth.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Ethan Wells. I am the Associate Choir Director at Siloam Springs Middle School and High School. So I actually see 7th through 12th grade every single day. I start my mornings at the middle school, teach 3 periods there. I help our director there with the 7th grade girls, have 7th grade boys, 8th grade boys, and then I come over here and help with the choirs here at the high school. This is my 5th year of teaching. Definitely some things that I would have done different, piggybacking off of, again, Teddy and Tanner, was discipline. And from that is perception, like especially setting up just that boundary the first time, like go in hard and strong and set that out, and then and I still have a problem with it, just being firm in that. Because sometimes you might get caught in a situation where you're having to shut something down, but you also need to go in 3 other directions. And it's easy to just be like, oh, well, I'll get back to that in a second and I'll like write them up like after class. But I know like for me, I have to sit down sometimes there in that moment and do it to make sure that I remember, or I have to write it down to make sure that it gets done. And just staying true to that discipline. Another thing that I really learned my first year, be aware of how you're being perceived with your presence. Something that I used to work at, actually where Teddy was, with Mark Langley, and Mark taught me this. He said, there's like, you're like 2 sides of a coin. And he said, there's the, yeah, let's get this done. Let's work. Let's have a great time, Mr. Wells. And then in an instant, you'll flip and you'll just be like mean, because that was like how I thought that I needed to discipline. Like it wasn't like a gradual thing of calmly saying like, okay, you need to stop this, like rein it back. It was just why are you doing this? You need to stop, blah, 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 and just kind of like badgering them with it. You need to come at it with a nice, calm, no, this is how it's going to be, and this is what you're doing. This is why you're not doing this, because we've already established this. So just be aware of how the kids are perceiving, because sometimes that can just turn a kid off completely and then just completely lose them. You could completely and totally lose them, and then you don't want to listen to anything you're saying, what you have to say, they could care less. 2 to 3 things that I wanted to, I think it was that we could do better, or that I wish I would have done better my first year, something like that. I wish that I would have reached out to more people, like within the ArkCDA community, like look at schools that have programs similar to mine and shoot them an email. Like there are so many people like in this state that are wonderful educators that more than likely have been through whatever you're going through. And just by a simple email, they can go and just answer all of these different things. I remember Emily Walters told me one time that she just shot an email, I think it was to like Curtis Minor or Keith Reeves, and she got back this like entire paragraph, and she was just like, oh my gosh, this is gold. She's like, why haven't I done this sooner? So just like reaching out. And also our kids are not just choir kids. They're also athletes. They're also in the book club. They might also be in the chess club. They're cheerleaders, and they really love seeing you at other things. It's just like you become a celebrity. And they're just like, oh, you're like wanting to see me do this other thing as well? Like, oh, wow, like that's great. And be able to like actually make a connection, say, hey, I saw you do really, really well at X, Y, and Z last night. And that will just make them 10 times better, and they'll want to connect with you more. That's something that's been like my personal like goal to do better at, just because they get so happy. And last but not least, what made you feel like you may quit? So I'm in my 5th year. This is my 5th year. Being completely and totally honest, last year was the worst year I have ever taught. I feel like I was an awful teacher. I had a lot of personal issues that just kind of bled over into every other aspect of my life. I had some really, really tough classes that I hadn't really had before. Like my grandmother passed away last fall. And that really affected me. And so I was just pushing off things with my work, and I wasn't planning. And so I just went in trying to fly by the cuff, and then it wouldn't go how I needed to. And then I had the largest class of boys I had ever had. We used to be combined 7th and 8th, and we had nearly 70. And we had 68 in there. And it was just every single day I was getting beat down and beat down and beat down. I felt like I wasn't doing anything right. It was just an awful class. It was just constant chaos. But I mean, and now I get to this year, and it's just like I still have almost every single one of those boys, and they're just like, hey, how's it going? It's like, it's great. So I don't know, just last year in general was just rough. Class sizes, discipline. I mean, that's just my own personal like thought and my own personal experience. Just make sure you're balancing those things and you're talking to someone. Okay, you got to make sure that you're figuring out you can talk to people about your school life and your school frustrations, but also dealing with your own feelings as a person, because you are still human, and you as a person need to be able to have some time to talk about your mental health and about what's affecting you, you know, or else it might end up bleeding into other aspects of your life. And I think we said a horror story. So my first year here, it's going to be quick. My first year here, we were at our Christmas concert. It was the first concert we had, my first concert here in Siloam Springs. And we didn't have an accompanist. Like, they were just sick. Like, they were like, I'm in the ER. It's like, I cannot come at all. And unfortunately, the choir director that was here at the time, her mother was also in the hospital. So I'm standing there the day of our concert, second year teacher, first year in this school. And I'm just like, oh, hold on, my lights went off. Gotta love motion sensors. I'm just standing there. I'm calling Leighton at JMB, and I'm just like, Leighton, do you have a digital copy of like some sort of performance track that you can send me right now of this song? I will pay for it. I was like, I went and I found a high school kid that was really, really great at piano. It was just like, can you learn this and play it? And thankfully she was able to. And so like we pieced together an accompanist, but that was possibly my like nightmare, is just getting there first year in the district, not knowing. It's just like, I don't know anyone. Oh, we'll figure it out. But if you need anything, Leighton will hook you up. He is ready and to go just with anything. He's a lifesaver.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Cassandra, I understand is online. Yay. So Cassandra's
Yes.
going to do the same thing. Tell us how many years you've been teaching, where you're at, your history of teaching, good, bad, ugly things. Did you ever want to quit and why? And things you've changed over the years.
All right, I can do that. My name is Cassandra Hernandez, and I teach with Dr. Ryan Fox at Rogers High School. I've been teaching since 2013. So it's been, wow, like 7 years. I think this is my 8th, which is crazy. And I'm just loving this year. It's really interesting, but I'm glad to be able to be with the kids and everything. So some good, bad, and ugly, and things I wish I had changed from my first year of teaching. Kind of what Ethan said, I wish I had reached out more, because it was my first job. I'm out of college. I feel so ready and prepared in the classroom, but I kind of put a lot of burden on myself to do everything. And there's times you just need to reach out. And I felt that I really wasn't the best with keeping up with how my district did finances. And I figured it out, but I didn't just simply ask someone in my district, can you help me? And so I felt like I put a lot of time catching up with that. So reach out, and no one will ever judge you for reaching out, whether it's someone in your own district or whether it's another choir director in the state. There is just a wealth of knowledge, and we all want to help each other. There's no oh, I don't want to share my secret on how I do this in the classroom because I don't want anyone else to succeed. That is not the nature of who we are, right? So always, always reach out. When you are new to teaching, you might think you know everything. You don't. I look back at first year Cassandra, and there's just so much that I did well, but I also could have reached out more and not put the burden on myself. I think I was just trying to prove I'm here, I've made it, and I can do this. And kind of along that line, I found that delegating things out to students to help you, that student could help you with, is amazing in so many ways, because A, you're getting help with something. Let's say you just have a whole shipment from J&B Music come in and you need help numbering it and stuff. My first year, I would have just done it all myself and stayed at school till 8 p.m. or something. But if you get students to help you, A, less work for you, but B, you are getting these students bought in, and like Tanner said, some ownership, some, just them feeling like they really are buying in and they're a part of the program. And that is just it's good on all ends if you have help, but also you have some students who really feel ownership. And one thing I've really started doing this year is we can all identify those students who they love choir with all their heart. And you might have a lot of those students. You might not have too many. Maybe they didn't come from a school before you where they're just loving choir, and you're trying to start from scratch and get them to love our art. But those students you identify who seem to be hungering for more, I've started to create opportunities for them to be more involved. Even if it's, hey, let's have an all-region practice, an extra one during advisory time. And you may not think they need it, and they may not think they need it, but the students who are really bought in and the students who really want to do more for choir, you've created an opportunity for them to show up to an extra thing. And I've noticed that's helped a lot. Or I'll ask 2 students, hey, can you meet me before school? I need some help doing this. They're like, yes, they're so excited. And then you notice that day in class later, they're ultra paying attention, and they're just starting to make choir their thing. And so that's not going to be every student where choir's their life, but you will have some, and let it be their life. Give them things to do, if that makes any sense. Another thing that I wish I had done more was inviting teachers and admin to concerts. And something that Ryan and I started doing was we would have our students write personal handwritten, this was before COVID, personal handwritten invitations that we would put in teachers' boxes, and they would pick a teacher of theirs, like, I'm inviting you to come to our concert. We're going to be singing this. I would love to see you in the crowd. And when a teacher gets a handwritten note saying that they're invited to something, do you think a lot of teachers come? Yes. So our attendance with the staff really grew, and they started to really start to come a lot. And now I have teachers who come every single concert, whether they get an invitation or not. And so giving some sort of a, just a handwritten letter is awesome. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on for things that I wish I had done was just having a better work-life balance, kind of tying into how I said that I would stay super late and do all this work that some of it a student could help me with, or I could delegate. I didn't have a good work-life balance. And so work started to become my life. So when work didn't go well one day and that was my life, I assumed I was failing at my job, which was my life. And so if you have this balance where you've separated, it's very healthy for you. And then a day where things don't go so well may not weigh as heavily on you because you haven't put all of your like pebbles in that one basket, because you have different ones. You have a separation. And I felt myself getting a lot more like healthy and easygoing in class when it wasn't my entire life. So yes. Did I ever want to quit? Yes. Times when I didn't have a work-life balance and I had one rehearsal that didn't go well, I would go home thinking, this just wasn't it for me. I should have done something else. I could be a doctor. I could be this. I could be that. Just not being hard on yourself. Be gentle. Be gentle with yourself. Your students do not notice the mistakes that you notice, that you make. They don't notice. They love singing. That's why they are there. So sing with them a lot, and they're going to love class. I think that's all I have. We can move on.
All right, well, here's what we're going to do. I need, so all the participants out there listening, these 4 people you just met, wonderful young directors, are the main part of our panel. I'm also going to be part of the panel, but I'm really not going to say anything unless I feel like I need to. Ms. Whitworth may as well. I want you to start putting some questions in the chat that we can put out there, and then they can speak to it. The reason I wanted each of, as I'm saying this, be thinking of what your questions are, and please put them in the chat. And you need to realize that where we are right now in this group of people is a safe place, and you need to ask anything. I cannot stress enough that you need to ask anything that is bothering you or has bothered you, or you've been afraid to ask questions for. I really love that 2 of them said, I was afraid to ask questions. I was afraid I would look like I didn't know what I was doing. And I personally feel like our young teachers and our new teachers, no matter how old they are, if they're right out of college or they went back to school, I feel like they're afraid to ask questions their first 2 or 3 years of teaching. And I think that's that whole, I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. But we did not know what we were doing our first 1 or 2 years or 3 years. None of us did. None of us had it figured out. We made horrible mistakes. We made funny mistakes. We made mistakes that we look back and we say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And you get better and you get better and you get better. The best thing that I ever did was have 2 directors on speed dial back when we had brick phones. Okay, it was a brick phone, not even flip phones. And I called those directors and I bugged them, and I stole literature and I stole ideas. And I was so not good at my job my first couple of years. I was happy to be in it. I was someone who came from the fast food industry after college. I did that. I was stupid. And I was so happy to get out of the fast food industry. Even the bad stuff about teaching made me happy because I wasn't being called 24 hours a day, but I did it so badly. Looking back, there's so many things. The first recording of my choir is so bad. It is, it's on a cassette tape, and it's called The Bad Choir. And I listen to it occasionally because they're just yelling. They're yelling. They're yelling. So in the chats now, I need you to ask questions. I need you to feel safe about asking questions. Don't think anything stupid. Don't think you should know it, because chances are you shouldn't. All right, so let's look back here at some of these things here that we have. All right, one of the first questions here is, what are some good ways to recruit boys into choir? I have a total of 9 in my entire program. Anyone on the panel want to speak to that you've had? Okay, Tanner, go.
A couple of ideas, and the reason I'm kind of excited to talk about this is because some of them I implemented fairly recently. Boys, the good thing, the wonderful thing about boys is that they are simple creatures. They are just simple creatures. And I have found getting a quality, a good singer, a good male voice in choir, or even not a good, not a great male voice in choir versus a female voice in choir is much easier to recruit because they are so simple. One thing that we did, I can't remember who I got this idea from, but we did basically almost like a fantasy football thing where I talk to my girls all the time. I'm like, y'all are always walking around with these boys and this, and why are they not in choir? And they're like, well, we don't know. So we picked some guys out that we wanted to recruit and put their name on a piece of paper up in the choir room, and 4 people could sign up to recruit that boy. And if that boy ended up joining choir, then everybody who put their name on that list got invited to an exclusive pizza party. And you would be shocked how many boys signed up for choir. And they would ask me too, well, what if my boyfriend doesn't want to do choir? He's a bad singer. I tell this story all the time. I've had boys that could sing like 2 notes. I'm not worried about that. Getting them there, getting them to buy in, and boys to me buy in sometimes easier than girls do in choir. If you really just show them your personality. And so that was a really good thing. We also are doing kind of like a VIP socially distanced movie night in our auditorium, which is very large. It's like an invite only type thing for some boys. And I got that approved through admin. I've got several boys signed up for that. And then the best one yet, I got my tenor bass course, and I was like, look, I know you guys have friends who you think would really be interested in choir. And so I've decided that if you bring me somebody and they sign up for choir, I will buy both of you a junior breakfast burrito and bring it to you. And that sounds so crazy, but I'm not kidding you. I just pouring in, and not every single one's going to follow through, but little things like that really, really work. And then once you get enough who just know your personality and how your classroom runs, it just starts to kind of recruit for itself, I feel like. And the girls are really bought into doing it and helping with it because they know that, if we don't have enough guys, it's going to limit the numbers we can have in mixed choir and things like that, and things that they want to do. And so it's been really successful on my end in that regard.
Okay. Any others that want to chime in on that before we go to another topic?
I have something really quickly.
Okay.
From the high school level, we had a big drop off from students like middle school not staying in choir, and then our freshman numbers were low. So we started this thing called Let the Men Sing, where every guy in choir on our side of town, all grades from 6 and up, they, one day after school, it's the middle schoolers, they come to the high school, and we have prepared songs in advance, common songs, and they get there, everyone's wearing their choir t-shirts. The guys in our grade have divided all the students, so we know who's coming. They divide all the students into different groups, and they have like a game thing with them, like a tournament, like a dodgeball tournament. Then we feed them pizza, and then we have a concert that night. And so the younger middle school guys are singing with the high school guys, and they're like, this is so cool. And we really make sure the high school guys like go up to them, talk to them. They're gonna think you're like the coolest thing ever. And the number we had the first year we did that, the 9th grade guys choir, my choir grew by like 300%. It was insane. And so just something like that, where they saw in middle school the really cool choir guys that were older than them they were like, I want to be in that. And I asked them, I said, how many of you joined choir or stayed in choir because of that event? And like over half the class raised their hand. So we found that to be super effective, and we're going to always do it. So.
Okay. Before I go to this next question, just because I'm seeing it there, Emily Newell, yeah, to clarify on that, 3-part mix means just that. Whatever you want to do. You want to do it all girls, you want to do it all guys, you want to do 34 girls and 1 guy. Yes, it does not matter. The 3-part mix is whatever you want, or 2-part mixed, or anything like that. Okay, the first question that was asked was, someone said, how do you plan when you aren't a good planner? And a couple of y'all mentioned when you first started, you were horrible at planning. What did you do to become a planner to help you be a good teacher? Teddy, go.
So the first thing I do is I figure out what music I'm getting. So like if it's all region at the beginning of the year, that's easy. And then I score study a lot. Like you look at it, you figure out what you need to know, what's the easy spots, what things you need to attack first. Don't ignore the endings of songs, because I did that a lot my first year, which was a disaster. And that's like part 1 of planning for me. Part 2 of planning is day-to-day planning. So like, so if score study is like weeks and months in advance, then day-to-day planning is like literal outline of like, you know, what you did in college, except more simplified, right? Or even more detailed if you're a minute by minute person. Sometimes, some days I have to be a minute by minute, or else I know I'm going to mess up and not get something done. So like when I taught 6th grade, I had to think their attention spans are really small. So I need to think in 10-minute chunks, like, okay, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, rehearse, activity, rehearse, brain break, activity, things like that, write it in. You'll have a ton of those things ready in advance, and then you can use that throughout the year, like week to week. So planning for me is like score study, and then think about like what my class period looks like, and then think about what activities I can repeat, and then be successful at. But that's planning for me.
To add as well, that was, yes, Teddy, all of that. And one thing that I found extremely difficult, and I think the other 3 people on the panel will also agree, it is insanely difficult to remember the process for every little thing you have to do for both ArkCDA and for, you know, your own individual school. Like Cassandra mentioned, like the financial thing. Like I would forget, like my financial person, she's awesome. I befriended her year 1, and she helped me with things that I would do wrong. But when she would come to me year 1 and say, don't forget to write this account number here on this check to make sure that it's da-da-da-da, I would be like, okay, got it. But I would never remember it. So year 2, I started this document, and it's in my bookmarks bar. And every time I needed to remember a process, how do I register students for all region? How do I do this? How do I do that? Because even the slightest little changes, or so I have like for each month, so it'd be like October, and I would have a list of things that I needed to do in October and how to do them, because I would learn new things about the process every year. And so even this year in that document, I added in a little note to myself in case we end up using Opus again, how that process works, so that when I come to it a year later, I'm not having to start fresh again. So that could really help some of you. Just get a Google document going, and from year to year, just add little notes to yourself, because man, I forget every year. I swear it's like I'm a brand new teacher. Every year we get to all region after I've been on summer brain. I'm like, okay, I've got to register them, and then I've got to do, you know, and just staying on top of that can be tough. So that's super helpful too when it comes to planning.
Hey, let's go. Go ahead, Ethan. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna make it short, sweet, and simple. Even if you don't think that you are one of those people, invest in a planner. Because I mean, I was encouraged to really invest in a planner, and every single day, like Teddy said, figure out your class, like figure out the flow of your class so that kids know every single day what to expect. Okay, we're doing this, then we're going to rehearse, then we're doing this, then we're going to do the next thing. And then for your own sanity, you might try to do and cover measures 1 through 20 that in that class period, or 1 through whatever, and you don't get there, write it down. write down, okay, we got this much, and then adjust your plan for the rest of the week and make sure that you practice what you're going to be teaching. Don't just go in blind.
All right, we have lots of fantastic questions, and I hope we can get to most of them. Looks like 2 people have asked this or a version of this question. What do you do to help students buy in to choir when they were put in there and it was not their choice? Have any of y'all experienced that, and what have you done to be successful?
For me, I'm just honest with those kids, and I want them to. I say, hey, you're not going to get your schedule change right now. They're not accepting any schedule changes. I want you to give this a try. I always go up to them. I introduce myself. It's like, hey, have you ever sung before? They tell me, yeah, no, and I try to make some sort of connection with them. And then, especially in those first 2 weeks of the beginning of the school year, or even after Christmas, we try to have fun and try to create that environment that wants them to do things. Because if you can, a lot of the times, at least for me, I've noticed that my kids are just, they think that they're too cool to sing, or they just, it's just not their thing, and they just don't want to try, and blah, blah, blah. But once they start realizing, oh, well, I can have fun. Like, this is fun. We play games in between those little brain breaks. So we might play a game of Poison, or do something to just get them up and active. That seems to have worked well for me. It's just maybe not drilling the music so hard on those kids that are just like, and just trying to have fun with them and get them to buy in.
Any other panelists want to speak to that? Okay, go ahead. Or was that no?
Oh yeah, I got something. So with my boys this year, I got a lot of like boys that don't necessarily, they're definitely the too cool for school boys. Like some years I get like really nerdy ones that are like all about it, and I connect with those boys really easily because of my nature as a person. But with the boys that are a little bit cooler, I don't always know how to act cool. But playing lots of games that are like competitive, like we played rhythm trash-ball, and for some reason they love that, and now they can sight read rhythm level 2 super easy, and they yell at each other on Friday whenever we play, and we even bought like a little plastic basketball hoop, and now they get pumped about it when we do it. We need to start adding singing to that soon. And then, but don't ignore, boys are not the only like students that are competitive. My girls are crazy. Like they are super duper competitive too. So if you have a class full of just sopranos and altos, definitely, do those competitive games and stuff. And then also like when you have downtime, you like can't go wrong with talking to your students. Like you have to talk to them 100%. Like I talk to my kids all the time. I love talking. They love talking. And then just by doing that, they know who you are a little bit better. And they're curious about you. They don't know who you are. If you give them a little bit of like anything about your life, they love it. So, and then they'll bring it up the next time. I have people that, I have some students that are like always like calling my wife a different names. Like, how's your wife, Rhonda? It's like, well, my wife's name's not Rhonda, but it's like, no, her name's Rhonda, or like stupid stuff like that. And like kids just eat it up. So be stupid with them, like learn who they are, play games. That's pretty much the biggest thing that has helped me and my personality as a teacher. So.
Yeah, being crazy, especially with boys, being willing to be crazy with boys and kind of be boys with them, especially if you're a male teacher, they really, really appreciate that. I'm going to try to combine 2 questions here, and if I didn't lose it, we're getting lots of questions, y'all, and I can already tell we probably won't have time to cover them all, but we'll do the best that we can. And if your question doesn't get answered and you would like an answer, please feel free to email this question again to me or Terry, and we'll put it out to ArkCDA and maybe start a Google Doc and let people jump in and answer. All right, so kind of combining 2 things here. someone's asking, saying that they have been teaching for 5 years, but were not a choir director for the first 4 years, but they are qualified to teach choir. And they're feeling like they're getting pushback because students are not seeing them as the choir director, even though they're qualified. And I'm also going to combine that with someone who has come to a school and the ghost of the old director is still there, and how do you overcome that? Kind of putting those two together. How do you get the kids to buy in? Have any of y'all experienced that? The ghost of the previous choir director, or kids didn't really buy into you as a director, and what did you do? It's kind of hard.
To the person that asked about not feeling like students find you qualified, I think that if I'm assuming you were a band person, you can unmute yourself. Can you give us a little more info, actually? Or who was that?
Yeah, okay. So I taught at Warren Middle School for 4 years, and I taught English. And then the choir position came open, and I have a background in music. And so my principal was like, do you want to, apply for this job? And I was like, I mean, yeah. And so I applied for the job, and now I'm teaching the same groups of kids that I taught English for 4 years. And so they compare me all the time to their old choir director because they still see me as their English teacher, and like I'll do something different than their old choir teacher did, and they'll say something like, well, why don't you still teach English, or something like that. Like, just they're 8th graders, so they've got a little bit of attitude about it. And okay. I've tried, I don't know.
Yeah. What I would do if I were you, they may not truly have heard you sing. And what if you sang for them? Like, have you done that already? Like, literally, I'm going to sing for you, not at you so you learn the pitches, but I'm going to sing for you. And they'll be like, she's talented. Okay, maybe she is qualified to teach us. I think like they might just need to hear like you perform for them. Sometimes it's as simple as that. I remember I had Andrea Ramsey as my teacher in 7th grade, and she would sing for us all the time. And we respected her more as a vocalist, and not just because she's a great teacher, she's fun. We were like, she's a great singer. And she sang for us all the time. It was awesome.
Well, I used to sing for them as an English teacher, and they would always ask me, why don't you teach choir? and so now it's just kind of funny. But I haven't tried it this year because of COVID and the time restrictions. I haven't. That's a really good idea. Thank you.
Any of the other panelists want to speak to any of that? Getting rid of the ghost of the previous director, getting it behind you?
I just wanted to touch base and make sure that it's very clear. One of the biggest things with before kids will really buy into and start listening to what you have to offer them, keep in mind too, there are some instances, like if they say things like, why don't you go back and teach English, things like that, you have every right to nip that in the bud and make it very clear that that is unacceptable. And so like there is a fine line of just being uncomfortable with a new situation and just being disrespectful. So I think really making sure that you're establishing that hard line first. And the same thing with Cassandra, especially in your position. And I would even make it nonchalant too, like, oh, we're gonna have an incentive karaoke Friday, and and they will inevitably be like, oh, Miss Reep, what are you gonna sing? What are you gonna sing? And then be like, oh, well, let me just and then sing it, and then they'll be so unsuspecting, and it won't even be like you're flexing or anything, and then they'll be like, oh my gosh, just kind of like chill about it. They will eat that up. And I would just say, if anybody's struggling with the ghost of a former director, the biggest thing that I could recommend that you do is just be absolutely unwavering in who you are, and that teacher aesthetic that I mentioned prior. The moment that you start to give in and go backwards to what was is the moment that they stop really believing in your brand and your aesthetic. So commit to who you are. And it may take some time, and that is okay. But don't ever go backwards. Just keep committing to who you are, improving your pedagogy, improving you as a person, but don't ever take a step back into somebody else for the comfortability of the kids.
All right, any others before we go on to a different topic? All right, something along this line that I saw over there is, especially with younger singers, and I think this applies to any singer, I mean, any age group this year in COVID and singing in masks. What are you doing to help the kids have confidence in a really large space with masks and we're 6 feet apart and they can't hear each other and they're terrified to sing? What are you doing to help combat that?
For me, I kind of take the coaching approach to teaching sometimes. Like I challenge them to sing out, and then like, you know, make sure they know it's a safe space. Also create an environment where they can feel comfortable, and then make it fun. Like we're singing, like we're in choir. That's what we do. We sing in here. So you're either going to do it or not. And then we're going to be good at it. And then, so like the first week, usually like we'll yell and explore our voices and figure out like my voice will crack a lot and we'll laugh about it. And then after that, it's just like routines. Like we sing, that's what we do every day. Challenge them. That's the biggest thing. I'm still working on that myself.
Anyone else have any mask singing magic, especially in large spaces this year?
I would say back to just committing to your brand. I have a group of intermediate girls who they are all fabulous musicians, can sight read so well, but they're just timid and it's really hard with them being distanced. And I'll literally just come into class from my AP music theory classroom and they're all kind of getting things started, and I'll just sing something really loud and be extra. I'll make mistakes. I'll highlight my mistakes. I'll purposely crack my voice in front of my boys and I'll call myself Georgia the Jungle and make all these weird sounds. And they just feel more comfortable, I feel like, when you do that. So I agree with Teddy on that.
All right. Did any of you come into a situation where the program or maybe a group of, let me back up here, how do I phrase this? Either a choir program that was very small or small-ish, and you had to do some building and had some successful building of that program, or a certain age group or class that was small that you built up somehow, some way with numbers? I know a lot of you teach at larger schools, and so that may not be one of the things that has been an issue, but anyone can speak to that.
I can. So this is my 4th year in Siloam Springs, and my first year, whenever I got here, they had actually just split 7 through 12 treble and tenor bass. So they used to just have 7th grade choir. It was all treble tenor bass, just mixed together. 8th grade choir, all treble tenor bass mixed together. And the previous director there would only focus on the treble singers. Only because, I mean, there would only be like 5 boys, so I don't know if his mindset was, well, they can just do something else at some other time. But the big thing was like CPA, and he would only take the treble singers, and so the boys just got pushed off to the side. And so my first year here, I got in here, we had 18 boys. I mean, and kind of like what Madeline's question went to, it was just kind of all over the place in terms of where their voices were. I had like 3 boys that really were sopranos still. I had 2 boys that I called basses, but really they were sort of on their way to being a tenor too. And so I just really tried to make them proud of anything that they did. I encouraged them to say, you are here. You are establishing what this is going to be, and you are going to leave a legacy. And it wasn't pretty at the beginning, and it was really, really hard to find some music that worked for them, but I kept digging and digging and digging. There was key part, and I had some kids singing in the octave, and then the other ones on the second part down the octave, just something that they could be successful with. And they honestly started building that culture a bit themselves. We went from 18 then to like 40 something, then to 60. And then this year we're sitting easy at 65 between the two. And now we have 2 of those boys classes. But a lot of it is establishing the culture of, again, like Tanner said, your brand, letting them know that they are enough, and really just encouraging them to get word of mouth, like out to the other people, that, hey, we're doing this. We had a donut day last year. You have a friend join up for choir, you get a donut. To this day, I have 9th grade boys, Miss Tufts, or Juliana Tufts, the high school director here in Salem Springs, she asked those 9th grade boys, because she's getting to know them, she was like, why did you join choir? And they said, well, so-and-so came and got me and gave, like, said if I signed up for choir, I would get a donut. And so I just didn't leave. I was just like, okay, well, there we go. But no, have fun, establish what you want it to be. Let them take ownership and say, you get to determine where this is going to be, and I'm going to help you go there, and encourage them. I don't know. I think that maybe helped.
All right. Any others before we hit another topic? All right. One of the things I see, and Hannah Norton, I see your question, and I'm kind of like you, but I was a double major. You know, when I was in college, if you told me I was going to be a choir director, I would have laughed at you, because instrumental was my thing, and playing trombone and band. But I also had been singing since I was in 8th grade in a barbershop quartet under the direction of the Arkansas Tech University choir director at that time. His son was my best friend. And then I joined choir in high school, my 11th grade year, and then I was a double major for a couple of years. So I got the pedagogy, a lot of it, and during my double major years, and then I had enough hours then to teach choir. But I see your question is, you don't have that pedagogy teaching. So panelists, what books would you suggest to someone who has more of an instrumental background, but now you've got to teach choir? What books and resources can give them a quick, here's how you do some of those things?
What's the name of the book Derek Fox has?
Yeah.
He was a band director, a band background, and is hugely successful.
I can't remember the name of it.
Leighton carries it. I'll have to ask him.
I do have that one, I think. I think I have that one. I think that's the one I have.
I think it's an excellent resource. I haven't read it myself, but I've heard lots of positive things about it.
So Tanner, go ahead, sir.
My biggest thing, I was a band kid too. Same thing. I didn't even sing until my senior year of high school. I was a trombone player as well, Matt. Yeah, we're a different breed. And I even still conduct a community orchestra. And to me, the biggest difference is vocal technique. You know, you can teach notes and rhythms, you can teach beauty of music. Some of that doesn't change. But vocal technique is so important, especially at the intermediate stages. How you're teaching them can affect their voices long term. You know, if you teach a trombone player poor embouchure, of course it's going to catch up with them eventually, but with the voice, that is their instrument and it's permanent, you know. And so it's just that's so important. I do have a little book. I still use it today. If there's a lick in a song or something that I'm really trying to get them to gain some vocal agility or something, I will go find this book and look up the different cards in it and find a vocalese that works to help them with that. And it's a binder and they're vocalist cards. And you literally go through, I have it on my desk still because I just recently used it. And there are all these tabs for posture. There's posture, relaxation, exhalation, inhalation, support, crescendo, decrescendo, messa di voce, register consistency, and so on and so forth, that I can just go in there and pick a topic that I'm really trying to work on, pick out that card. And a lot of times I'll modify it just a little bit to what I like. And it just gives me a way to keep my warm-ups fresh and to really teach them legitimate technique. And while we're at it, technique is usually the issue as to why many singers struggle with sight reading. It's usually not because they can't hear it. It's because of their technique or lack thereof. And so my biggest thing is that the biggest difference for me is the vocal technique. And so if you can really focus on working on that warm-up period at the beginning of class, you're going to see so much improvements in the rest of your stuff. And also with vocal technique, literature selection, really making sure that you're giving them literature that's achievable, that makes them get a sense of accomplishment, but that you're also able to teach them a lot of musical elements too as well.
Hannah, in all your free time, because teachers have so much free time, I would recommend you take some voice lessons. If you've never had voice lessons before, find someone in your community at the college nearby and try to take some lessons. Once you've experienced it, then you can impart it. And that might be kind of hard to do, but that came to my mind. So, yeah.
I did take some over the summer with the Jensen McDaniels. And I did find that helped going into my second year. But I just still feel like I'm like not good at it. Like I just still feel like I struggle. I don't know. And
the years of experience will pile up and you'll get better and better. Ask questions, watch videos, and listen to good recordings of choirs. Ask people, could you have good recordings of this song, and then play that for the kids and have them imitate what they're. If you can't demonstrate, play recordings of it being done correctly, if nothing else. And then as you learn the pedagogy and tell them, here's how you achieve that, then you can explain it. Even if you can't demonstrate it yourself, have recordings of the good stuff happening. Find good individual singing recordings and play those. Here's a good example of a female doing this. Here's a good example of a male, so on and so forth. Yeah, you got a little bit of a hill to climb, but you're going to get there. You will, because you've got, like they were saying, you have all the other skills, the music reading, the musicality, what good music is. All right, I'm going to go on to something else here.
While he's looking to see a question, I'm noticing a lot of books that people are putting in the chat saying, hey, this is a good one, you might consider these others. I'm copying those and pasting the titles into our hyperlinks so that you can find them later if you want to research into that.
All right, this applies to everyone more than they probably know. So we're all having to leave our rehearsal area to air out and go other places. And you may not be able to sing wherever you go each time, and you need other activities. So what good non-singing activities in masks are you doing that are not activities that contaminate the environment in terms of our protocols? So panelists, what non-singing stuff are you doing? Ethan, go.
Rhythm. I've noticed our kids, at least at my school, our singers are so bad at rhythm, especially compared to a lot of our band kids, because our band kids are used to reading rhythms and having to read, like, okay, I need to play this, I need to play that, I need to do it in this rhythm. And so that's something that we started just at the beginning, okay, taking attendance. Okay, now we're moving into our theory lesson, whether that be rhythm, whether that be, just speaking through solfege, and just sight reading, just not singing. Some other sort of key signatures, maybe that for our more advanced choirs at the high school, some other sort of fundamental thing, but specifically for me, rhythm.
And all of a sudden it's a Halloween movie at Ethan's place.
I have one.
Go ahead.
We started a composition unit because it's part of the standards is to have them be creating music and not just singing music that's already been created. And so we started a composition project, but we really just outlined the basics of what makes a good melody. And then the students used the website. It's called flat.io, and it's kind of like MuseScore or Finale, but it is very like made for education, made for like underclassmen and everything. But we outlined what makes a good melody, and the students created their own like 4-measure melody, and a lot of them have never put notes on a staff, and then they can play back. And then I get to go around and say, okay, we said you shouldn't have 2 skips in a row. There should be a skip and a step. And you start to be able to see how they view music better than in rehearsal. And so I think that's been like really illuminating on how much they really know, but also it's been really fun for them. And they're like, I'm going to compose more. And that's a fun thing to do. That's still very like a part of our content, but doesn't involve singing.
I was going to add as well on, this has been the funnest discovery for me. I started doing rhythm with my kids, but I was like, how do I get them learning how to count rhythms and it not be monotonous? And so I found a playlist called Hip Hop Poetics, a classroom playlist. And it's like 90s hip hop beats and rap beats that are clean. And there's also another one that I found recently that's called Clean Pop Hits 2020. And some of them you kind of have to sort through, but then I've used those to make my own playlist with appropriate tempos. And so I'll play that, and it's like the best day ever doing that, because they're moving, they're hearing music, they're counting rhythms with a steady beat. And we have the discussion of what is rhythm versus pulse, and that. So that's a big one. Another thing is too, like Matt was saying, having them listen to people who are really, really good. Listen to choirs that are phenomenal, specifically at things that you were trying to get them to achieve. Like this past week, and it was just during pastime as they're coming into class. I was playing some various songs that, like I had the Aeolians playing one day. Just letting them hear some quality voices and choirs. You just can't go wrong with that. Keeping them doing music of some sort, and they'll continue to buy in with it.